So my name is Ryan Graves. Thanks for the warm welcome and intro. There's a lot of light up here on me. I just want to see who has used Uber. I know we're not in Des Moines yet. Okay, not enough, but we'll get there. Our expansion isn't slowing down, so we're kind of working our way into the U.S.'s kind of second-tier markets, and so Des Moines may very well be on the roadmap. So today I just want to talk a little bit about what I've learned, kind of personal perspective on scaling Uber, and in really my first successful entrepreneurial endeavor, and some of the stuff that we've done along the way, and ways that you can kind of keep the dream running. Because the startup thing is everyone kind of fantasizes about the hustle and the non-stopness of startups, but I also think that there's some lessons that I've, coming off of a 2-week vacation in Spain, the first since my honeymoon in 2009, I'm like feeling recharged. This is like a whole new feeling, and I'm kind of ready to dive back in for another 4 years or something before our vacation. So I'll kick it off. So a few lessons. Before digging into some of those lessons, I was thinking, okay, I'm Thinc, Iowa, and I've never been to Iowa before, I have to be honest. But what do I know about Iowa? And this is not entrepreneurship related at all, but I went to Miami of Ohio, and one of the things I hated about the school, really one of the only things I hated about the school, was that there was really there wasn't really a strong athletics vibe to the school. There wasn't a great football team at the time. Wally Zerbiak went there, that's awesome, but there wasn't great basketball. So I was like, I'm never going to miss a home football game. That's my thing. Like, 4 years, I'm going to support this if I got to walk the walk. And so I did that, and we had a really good year. I think it was 2003 or 4. And Iowa spoiled that. That was the fun screenshot. That's Ben Roethlisberger, who I'm not a big fan of him, actually, so let's just put that out there. But this was a tough one to accept. So you guys beat us in the first game of the season. We then went undefeated, and we were finished ranked 11th. But it's Iowa who ruined that. So I'm going to put that aside, because I love you guys, and share a little bit more. So first lesson is, echoing Brad's speech, like insert his talk here, I fully agree. I think you can build a great company anywhere. After college, I went to Chicago following a girl who was my now wife, and that was pre-Groupon, and that was pre-really any kind of strong startup community in Chicago. And I was very interested in startups. I was working at kind of a tech consulting company at the time, and I was just very into startups and glued to TechCrunch, and I don't think Silicon Prairie exists then. But I was very, very into the startup scene, and I just bought that this can be done anywhere, and it doesn't really matter. I then moved to Milwaukee, and I wanted to kind of keep ties into the scene, and so I started this like video blog where I interviewed entrepreneurs just because I wanted to understand what made them tick. And we had some pretty successful interviews. And I didn't get equity for interviewing or highlighting any of these people, but I really wish I had, because I talked to some really interesting people. This is Andrew Mason of Groupon, and this is well before he did Groupon. And there was this kinds of caliber people coming out of kind of non-hub cities. There's a lot of really awesome companies coming out of Milwaukee, and of course here. So I really think the best thing, and this is really just echoing Brad's kind of notion, in that the best thing you can do for a startup community is stop talking about the community. Stop worrying so much about networking events. Go to events so that you can recruit. Go to events so that you can get deals done. And hire. And the more that you're focused on just building companies, I think the better off you'll be in building a community. So, go Iowa. So I started with just a lot of hustle. I didn't think that I had any kind of like intellectual capacity over anyone else that was going to set me apart. I'm not an engineer by training, and so I realized, I think junior year of college, because at the beginning of college I would just study when my friends was studying. Well, there's always somebody not studying, and so the beginning half of college I wasn't that great of a student. And then I realized I got to hustle. Like, this is all about what I do if I'm going to be successful. And so the second half of college, I was actually a pretty good student. And this realization kind of came, and I took it to work, and I learned to really like working hard. And I kind of put career decisions first. which is kind of how I ended up in Milwaukee, and I started working at GE. And I really thought that I need to hustle, but at GE, I kind of looked around at entrepreneurs that I was most interested in spending nights and weekends on projects, and I said to myself, I can't be the GE guy. Like, this is not who I am. And there's nothing wrong with GE, but that's just the corporate career of 20 years at the same company was just not really my thing, and I had to build more than I was able to at that company. And so I built this company, and it was a very short-lived, it was kind of borderline between project and company. It was essentially TweetDeck, and I had the first kind of product manager experiences, and I had a co-founder, and I was writing specs for a product, and then I had to go out and sell it, and I had to do everything, right? That's entrepreneurship. And it was an unsuccessful project, but it gave me the outlet that I needed while I was working at the corporate job to kind of feel a little bit alive. And then in an effort to get out of GE, I kind of said, I have to tell a better story. And so I was living in Chicago, and I went door to door from bars and restaurants in Chicago kind of saying, look, and I didn't work at Foursquare at the time, but I said I did. And I was like, look, we want you to be on Foursquare. You have all these people are checking in, and I kind of showed them how the app worked, and I was like, you need to run a mayor deal. And this is when Foursquare maybe had 200 or 300 or 400 mayor deals. So I lined up 30 potential deals around Chicago, and then I sent an email to a number of people. I was just trying to make as many relationships as I possibly could. And I got into Fred Wilson, and I had Fred intro me to Dennis, and I had 2 or 3 other people intro me to Dennis on the same day. And he said, sure, I'm happy to chat, because I followed up with, here's my 30 mayor deals that I'll bring you, and I just want to do whatever I can, whether it's community or biz dev. And so I lined up an internship for myself at Foursquare, and then that was my thing. And I wouldn't talk about GE anymore. I would talk about my Foursquare thing. And so then this tweet came by one day, and it was Travis Kalanick, and he tweets looking for this product manager killer and any tips. And I was just hustling, and I was following him because I knew he was tapped in on what was going on in Silicon Valley and investing in companies. And so I followed up, here's a tip, email me, let's do this. And so that was my intro to the guys who initially had the idea for Uber, is just hustle. I was just watching what was going on. I was trying to meet every freaking person I could. Flew out to New York to meet these guys, and I finally, because of just trying to put myself in the right position, had a story to tell, and he bought it. So I joined Travis and Garrett in getting ready to launch what was called Uber Cab, and I eventually moved to San Francisco after kind of doing the back and forth from Chicago, and that was kind of the origins of Uber Cab, and it was all because of just hustle. And it was like, I'm going to put myself in the right position. I'm going to meet as many freaking people as possible, and Uber's kicking ass, and I'm here because I met this guy on Twitter. And he's not the only person that I've met on Twitter. Like, for some reason, make a lot of things happen on Twitter. And so you can reach people. I'm probably one of the larger evangelists ever for Twitter because of some of the opportunities it's opened up. And it's just hustle and relationships. And I think the hustle word is probably overused a little bit, but it's worked. And so that's lesson number 1, is when you don't have anything, you just got to hustle your ass off. The second with lesson that I've learned at Uber is, and I think the boxy guy, forget his name, sorry, was, he said, you have to solve a problem, right? You can't just go out there and listen to your users and do everything they want. You've got to start with a problem, and the problem that we found was very clear, right? This is somebody standing on a street in San Francisco on I don't know, whatever night this is, but one of the crazy stats, 72% of all incoming taxi requests on a San Francisco Friday or Saturday night go completely unanswered. And so that's insane. Like, clearly there's a problem here, and there's some solution that we might be able to put together that can fix this. And so really credit goes to Garrett, who came up with a very elegant and simple solution. And this is the very first screenshot of Uber Cab 2.5 years ago. The app doesn't look a ton different than it does today. I mean, sure, there's a number of features on the back end, and it is quite complicated, but the simplicity of the solution is obvious. And so I think that as you're starting a company, as you're considering alternatives, not only do you need to be pretty excited about solving it, but you need to have a problem to solve. And I think a lot of people just chase the next social thing, and it's cool. I think there are a lot of big problems to solve in communication and media and social, but I think that there's a lot of problems that are less sexy, like transportation, that should be considered. So find a problem, go after it, and usually the first solution for that problem isn't actually that complicated. Next lesson, and I think this might be maybe the biggest lesson of them all, is you've got to hire the best frickin' people possible. Our team is very, very young. I think the average age is something like 25, 6. I think I'm one of maybe 3 or 4 people in a company of now 135 or 40 that's married, right? And it's very young, but I'll put our 20-year-olds against any 40-year-old crew ever anywhere, right? We're ready to take on the world, and we've been very selective, and it's paid off, and we can get a lot more done with an operations team in a city of 3 than many of 5, 10, 15, whatever. So I think you can screw these hires up in 2 ways, right? You can hire somebody who just sucks, and that's a risk, and it's hard to filter people. And I think that the closer you can get the hiring process and the filtering and the recruiting process to what they're actually going to do in the role, the better. So our process is very simple. That we're looking for people who are very, very analytical, and we're looking for people who are very creative. And so guess what our 2 exercises that we go through are? So there's an analytics exercise and a creative exercise, and we evaluate those people on 2 fronts. And but I also think that one of the major risks that people forget when hiring is that you can actually hire someone who's freaking awesome, and you're going to waste a lot of time because 2, 3, 4 months in, they're going to realize this is not the role they were hoping for, and this is not something that they're ready to dedicate their lives to, or dedicate literally their lives, because that's kind of what we ask of folks. And so I think be careful of these 2 risks in hiring. There is this trade-off in hiring the best people of speed versus quality, because we could be a 40-person company because we're only going to hire 1 out of 100 or whatever. I think Google has some crazy stats around getting 1 million resumes and hiring a 0.001% or whatever it is. But the challenge in speed and quality is that when you're building a business and you need to grow fast, these 2 things tug on us all the time. And so obviously we have a process that's doing a pretty damn good job of keeping the best in and not the best out, but it's also sometimes you screw up. And I've had to do it a handful of times, luckily not that many, but when you find somebody who's not the right fit, they got to go quick, because not only are they going to slow down the projects they're working on, but the teams around them and the teams they're a part of start to feed or start to see the mediocrity there, and it'll kill the whole team. It kills productivity for the whole squad. And so you've heard it a million times, but the fire fast mantra is something that I have learned in real life, and it's real, and it's hard, and it hurts, and it's like you feel mean, and it's not something that's fun. I keep it to the end of the day if possible, but getting rid of the wrong people is maybe one of the most important pieces of keeping quality and hiring fast. So 2 examples, and I'm not going to call out the cities to kind of save the reps of these people, but these are 2 pretty close to exact graphs of 2 different cities, and both times one kind of rhymes with Harris and one ends with an orc, but it literally is the story where we were flat, and it wasn't killing the business, it wasn't ruining Uber that one of our cities was doing poorly, but we realized that something's got to change, and literally as soon as we were able to bring in the right team that had the same perspectives as we did, that had the same hustle and the same kind of work ethic and creative analytical approach that all of our Uber operations team have, all of a sudden it just started taking off. And so time and time again, the team and the quality of people becoming one of the most important things for your business has proven. So the next lesson that I've learned is just being an optimist. And this is hard because there's everything working against you, right? Building a company is like being in a freaking boxing ring. Like you always have to be on your toes, and you're always, putting your nose out there on something, and you're going to get clocked. But you have to be happy, you have to be excited, and you have to sell. And so, people always think things aren't going to work, and that's why most of the time things aren't done. I can't tell you how many times I've heard, oh man, I had the Uber idea. I wanted to do this in like 1994. And it's not, rocket science, the high level concept of what Uber is, but people said it couldn't be done. And they're like, oh, I did the research on Uber and the regulatory, it just didn't make sense. Maybe it doesn't make sense, and the regulatory is a nightmare. We're living and breathing it. But the reason why it exists now is because we believed it could, and we were like maybe irrationally optimistic that we could get it done. My job is to sell Uber every single day, right? I'm talking to people who are going to be candidates. I'm talking to partnerships. And in order to close a deal, in order to close a candidate, I have to be the most optimistic person ever. And fortunately, it's like self-affirming. Like, I've sold this idea over and over. I believe it more than anyone, probably. We're going to be huge. It's going to be amazing. But you have to be the eternal optimist when you go into a new market or when you go into a new deal that this is going to be the best freaking thing possible. And so getting that excited and staying that excited, which isn't easy, is maybe one of the most critical skills as an entrepreneur. And also, I talked about that creativity that we look for. It's not just, bubbles and ideas and whiteboards and fluff. Creative is oftentimes just solving problems and figuring out ways to shuck and jive and fix things. And I think that optimism kind of breeds solutions. So it's important. Next lesson. I think, I said this at the very beginning. It's like people glorify, I only sleep 4 hours. And people glorify, I even kind of glorify, it's like, I haven't taken a vacation in 2 years. How cool am I? It's stupid. It's like, I've kind of come to the conclusion that sleep is pretty important, and it's cool. And it's okay to realize that that's what we need in order to be productive. 2 or 3 years ago, I was kind of at a level where I could sustain 5 hours of sleep a night. And at this point, I'm kind of in the 7.5 range. But I'm getting way more done today than I was 3 years ago. And I think, no sleep isn't cool, but working for years every single day is pretty cool. And fortunately, that's what it takes to kind of build a huge company. It's not going to happen overnight. And you've got to just keep coming back at it. And you're doing this 6 days a week. And so take care of yourself. It's not that sweet to be sick. And it's not that sweet to wake up to these things. And if you don't, if you're not well rested and you're ready to take on the biggest problems, then you're not going to have the endurance to endure these types of wake-up calls, right? When crazy shit happens to your company, which it will, and we've definitely seen our fair share. When we woke up to 90 hours or 90 days in jail for every ride that's done, that was an exciting day. But it was, I'm glad I got a full night's sleep before, right? So I think take care of yourself, have an outlet. I got back I grew up surfing, and then I quit when I was in college in the Midwest, and then now that I'm back on a coast, I try to surf a couple times a week, and I can just totally let go. I'm in the water, and I don't think about work for maybe an hour, which is crazy. And it's so nice to have an outlet. And I'm not familiar with vacations, but I just took one, and it was amazing. Spain, has anyone been to San Sebastian? It's insane. And so right now, coming back off that break, I'm refreshed. I got to spend a ton of time with my wife, and I really did take a break from work. And now I could not be more excited to just dig back in and really take on the hard stuff and do this stage from 140 to 500 or 1,000 or whatever. I'm ready to rock. So I would it's not that cool to burn yourself out. Next lesson is, mostly I'm talking about in building the culture of your company, but be human, right? How cool is that, frog? So I think there's a lot of things that we've done right as Uber. There's a lot of things we've done wrong. But one of them is that there is a real humanity, a real personality to our company. And one of the things our CEO started saying is, we give riders high fives, and that's cool. Like we have a relationship of fun, both on social media and in person at our events. We kind of say we bring Uber luxury to the masses, right? It's not so stiff. We don't need to be so, uppity. That's not what it's about. It's about being us. And so we realized that we want to have a lot of personality in our marketing. And so a couple of those marketing efforts that have been fun is, on Valentine's Day, we gave every single female, in the afternoon and in evening on Valentine's Day, every single female got a red rose, right? And that's kind of story that goes a long, long way on the internet. And it goes a long, long way for some of those guys who forgot to get a rose on Valentine's Day. And it went an even longer way for some of our engineers, right? So it's just kind of some of the personality that we bring to the table. In DC on President's Day, we did this thing called the Ubercade. And so you guys know what a motorcade is. Like you've watched the president driving a motorcade. It's kind of cool. He's got his flags flying, and there's Social Security. There's Secret Service. Whoops, Freudian political slip. So the Ubercade goes for the president. And so we said, this would be awesome. It's President's Day. So we had an Ubercade. We had a SUV, which I think it was what was it, Tahoe or something, pull up. And right behind it would be the town car. And right behind it would be another SUV. And two guys would hop out of the SUVs with little Secret Service, earpieces, and open the door for the person. And they would hop in, and they're like, this is amazing. And so we filmed the whole thing. We put it on YouTube. It got tens of thousands of views. And it was just something fun, a lot of personality. I don't have a slide for it, but we did 2 or 3 months ago, we did on-demand ice cream trucks, right? And it's kind of fun to show off that we can do a little bit more than on-demand transportation, but we brought ice cream trucks into, I think, 10 of the cities that we're in. You could hit a button on your phone, and in 5 minutes, instead of getting a private driver, you got, the music ding, ding, coming down the street. And it was phenomenal. I mean, actually, it was kind of scary in that there was a lot of negative backlash towards us because people were like, I couldn't get frickin' ice cream. And I'm sorry, it was just a promo. It wasn't a service we're offering. But, so I guess we owe some people like Ben & Jerry's or something. But anyways, we try to inject some of this personality and some of this fun into the Uber brand. And not only does it make for a much more fun, cool, and engaging brand, but it actually makes work fun. Like, what did I do today? Well, I don't know, 10,000 people got ice cream because of me. Like that, it makes work fun. And so be human. On the other side, that was the demand side. On the supply side, Uber partners with drivers, right? We don't own or operate vehicles, but we partner with limo drivers. And so there's a real relationship there that we have with our drivers. And so where we give our clients or riders high fives, we give our drivers hugs, because these are the guys that are making shit happen. These are the guys that are powering the service. And these are the persons behind the product. And so a couple stories. This is Riyadh. Riyadh actually had, he was one of these one car guys, total hustler, which is illegal. You can't just pick people up on the road when you're a limousine. And he was doing that. He tried to pick up one of our engineers, another guy named Ryan. And Ryan was like, yeah, I got the ride thing covered, thanks. But he told him about Uber, and the next day Riyadh was curious enough. He emailed us up and said, I would like to come in and learn more. So he came in, and now Riyadh's running a business of 8 or 9 cars, and he's like legitimate businessman, entrepreneur, came from one car, one man hustler. And this is the kind of American dream that's being built on top of Uber. And Riyadh actually had his first son, 6 months ago, and named his first son Ryan, after the engineer that he met. So this is Hani. Hani is a bit of a comedian. He always tells folks that he is a Chippendales dancer. Yeah. This is Steve Aziz. Steve is just another one of those cases where he came in, I think he was running 3 or 4 cars, limousine company, and partnered with Uber. After 6 or 7 months, had moved all of his cars on and almost as exclusively Uber. And he's always telling us that he's going to grow the fleet. I'm going to have the biggest fleet on Uber. And he also had his 6th child recently. And dude, that's really expensive. You know, kids are very expensive. You're gonna have to build the fleet. And he's like, I'm working on it. So he's building the fleet. So be human. It's a lot more fun. Celebrate victories. I think it is important to high five. Like, this is a screenshot of what we call God View. And God View is our operational tool to see the system in real time. And this is San Francisco, which is our first city. You know, probably a week in, 2 weeks in. And, you know, at this point, we're like, this is crazy. Like 4 concurrent rides, like bust out the champagne. And it was a party. And it was like, we were live. And that's worth celebrating. Like, that's a big accomplishment. And, you know, the champagne was definitely flowing on New Year's of 2012. This is 4 of, I think, the 8 or 9 cities that we had live then. And, you know, it's cranking. And so the celebrations are going to grow and the accomplishments are going to grow in building a business. But I think it is really, really important to make note of them along the way. Because, again, then you don't get burned out. You realize we're working for something, the culture of the team builds, and it's okay to get excited about what you're doing. And so every morning, you know, this is kind of something to celebrate. This is our revenue graph, which obviously I'm not going to show you the left axis, but, you know, Uber's cranking, and it's something to celebrate. And so every single staff meeting that we have, at the very end, we kind of show the all company growth, and the whole company weekly gets to kind of celebrate in every other city's growth and the company as a whole's success, and that's good. This is one of my last lessons, but this is my beautiful wife. And this is in, I think, Madrid, in front of a train. But I really do think it's important as an entrepreneur to have a good support system, right? There's going to be crazy ups and downs. And so, you know, mine is talking to her about what's going on. And I'll often, like, I love when she gets to meet candidates because she has a great read on people. And whatever your support system is, you've got to have one. Because I think, you know, when I got this tweet and responded to it back in the day at the very beginning of what has become a very fun Uber run, I think I got off the phone with Travis after the first time of chatting with him at like 1:30 in the morning, and I walked in to my bedroom and I shook my wife and woke her up, and we were living in Chicago. She's from Chicago, close to her family, and I said, what do you think? I think there's a chance that we would be moving to San Francisco. What do you think? This is 1:30 in the morning. And she's like, whatever you think, if it's the right play, then let's do it, at like 1:30 in the morning. And so that's a support system right there, and that continues today. When you travel as much as I do, I pulled this from TripIt last night. But, you know, I got 150,000 miles on the year, and I still have a couple months. When you're gone that much and you're burning the candle on both ends, support is absolutely critical. So there's a few lessons that I've taken away from taking Uber from, you know, 0 to almost 140-ish people and cranking. But I hope that that's helpful, and I'm happy to be the caboose for Thinc, Iowa. Hope everything was solid. And thanks. I'm happy to do a couple questions also.
You guys all know the deal. We got some microphones over here on the left and on the right. My question for you, Ryan, is this. I happen to work in my co-working space in Santa Monica, happens to be Uber's co-working space, Co-Loft, and I see these guys every single day bringing in potential drivers and providing trainings. How do you guys maintain consistency across the country in different cities? Because the touching point is so important. One bad experience, yep. If it's in Omaha, it can change things in San Francisco to New York, et cetera. So how do you maintain consistency in the customer experience?
So I read a book a while back, maybe a year and a half or so, called The Checklist Manifesto. And it's this guy, cardiac surgeon named Atul Gawande, and he's out of Boston. He looked into the process for performing heart surgery. And as you can imagine, it varied around the world from Bangladesh to Boston. And he did an assessment on their process and what was followed. And he actually built a checklist around performing this surgery. Around, the whole team stands in a circle and everyone just says, my name is Ryan and I'm the surgeon. And the next person goes, I'm Dave and I'm the anesthesiologist or whatever. And everything from that kind of communication piece all the way down to like scrubbing your hands to performing the task. And so it wasn't a complicated checklist, but it was one that got everyone on the same page. And then he distributed that same checklist to all the hospitals that he visited, and the success rates rose significantly. And the premise is that humans can accomplish very complex tasks over and over if they follow these checklists. I mean, this is why flying up an airplane, I would imagine, I've never done it, but I imagine it's fairly complex. But the reason they're so successful at doing it over and over is that there's checklists. And if you're a pilot, you live and breathe by like, all right, the left window is closed, check. The right window is closed, like the very basics. And so I adopted this, and in our operations process, we talk about playbooks and checklists. And so everything from validating a driver's, insurance, looking at the vehicle quality, what characteristics or personality traits do we look for in like even just 10 or 15 minute interview. Every one of those pieces is checklisted, and so it's followed pretty much to a T in every city. And so the standards are very well designed and hopefully enforced pretty well.
So when you run into obstacles like that, cease and desist, that's pretty widely publicized. Obviously, everybody in the company can see that.
Yep.
How do you manage damage control in terms of how that affects your company culture when you run into that kind of stuff?
So a little bit, we have a central point of communication, and like everyone kind of knows that this is, engineers or marketing or communications, like everyone knows what they should and should not communicate, essentially. So there's a central point of running kind of strategy and communication. As we've grown, we're from one city at the point when we got this cease and desist in San Francisco to, we have 3 or 4 or 5 different kind of regulatory and legal situations going on in different cities now. And, we have a general counsel now. So we've matured, but I think everyone knows what their role is in the company. And so I don't think people are going out, or I know that people aren't going out and talking about things that they're not directly responsible for. And so, that's the long and short of it, is that people know what they should be contributing towards. And there's a lot of input towards our strategy kind of internally, but we have a pretty strong wall of like, this is what's happening inside the company. And, we're not very public with revenue and that sort of thing. And so it's kind of easy, because of the culture we've built, to just keep internal company things internal.
Cool. Thank you.
Yeah.
I don't have a question per se, but more of a request.
Sure.
Des Moines really, really, really needs our taxi industry disrupted. Could you please put us up on our list?
Yeah. So here's how it works. One of the things that we look at is just how many people have signed up in Des Moines.
Sure.
So before we go to a city, obviously we'll pull those numbers, and that's one of a handful of metrics. But in many cities, we'll launch and we'll have 1,000+ credit cards on file with accounts like ready to rock that have, they're checking the app on a weekly basis sometimes to see if we're there. So if you guys all sign up for Uber, then it'll increase the chance that we're in Des Moines for sure.
Cool, thanks.
Yeah.
So I was in New York and tried to use Uber and had kind of a bad experience. And you guys followed up and it was awesome. And somehow they found my account and sent me like a gift card. So I was hoping you could talk about how you feel about customer support and how you've instilled that in your company, and kind of what you guys do to be so awesome at that.
Yeah. So first of all, we don't really look at we don't call it customer service in any aspect of the role. I think customer service is like outsourced and it's terrible. Like you can't get anyone on the phone or what have you. We've taken, and I think Zappos kind of led that charge. And we've taken the approach that we're going to put our best, most creative, most empathetic, most just best, kindest hearts on that challenge. And so we have a guy named Brian in San Francisco who was one of our first community managers, and the guy's got a heart of gold. Like, he's got kind of the Apple kind of, when you go to the Genius Bar or whatever, like that approach where it's not the question you ask that I'll solve, it's the question you ask plus like the next 3 that you might. That's my job, to solve that every single time. And so people just feel the love. And so when we go to, when we get the regulatory stuff is coming down on us in DC, it's, we ask people for their support, and our hashtag's UberDCLove, and we feel the love. Like, we're there for the user, we're there trying to put a solution together for the city, and we take this celebrate the city approach pretty seriously, that we want to really solve a problem for the city. And so people see that in our business, I think. And so people are actually pretty lenient with us. It's hard to deliver what we do and do a decent job at it. It can always be better, but when people have issues, sometimes you get the asshole, and maybe sometimes even Uber brings out the asshole in people, because they're like, you know what, last time it was perfect and it was heaven, and this time it was just slightly off, and I'm so angry, and it kind of hurts. It's like, come on, like, in the larger context, like, this is still a pretty decent experience. But we just take a very like forward approach with like showing love, and it just seems like, going back to that slide of like be human, it just seems like the right approach. Like, how would you handle it with a friend? If we can replicate that across all of our users, that's going to be the ideal for us as a business and them.
So if I'm correct, you were the CEO for about a year at a point with Uber, and in fact, I just checked the article that I remember reading that, and at the time that news came out, there was a super pumped word was used in the release, I think.
Super pumped, yeah.
Yeah,
I remember it was kind of a joke, yeah.
Can you talk about that transition?
Yeah.
And it was also around the fact that you were excited to have the founder come in the company full time and take it on. So.
Yeah, so I mean, you guys saw the tweet, right? When I came into Uber, there was 2 guys who essentially had the idea and kind of incubated it, and brought me in to run it as the general manager. Put me in touch with a bunch of angel investors, and we pitched it. And as we raised money, company that's funded needs a CEO. And Garrett Camp, who had the original idea for Uber, was running StumbleUpon, and Travis was full-time in angel investing. And so I took the CEO role and ran it for 10 or 11 months or so. And it was a phenomenal experience. But I think we were getting to that point. Travis came in full-time right before we had raised our second round and went to New York. And we were getting to that point where the technology was becoming more and more important. And the operations obviously was important, but the tech was critical as well. And so, Travis was like, look, I have a couple different options, and but Uber's the most exciting. Like, this has got the most potential. It's not like he wasn't involved. Like, we were working together a lot the first full year. And he said, what do you think about getting involved full time, and let's partner up on this? And I was like, sweet. Like, I was super pumped. Like, it was an opportunity to work with an entrepreneur that I have an immense amount of respect for, and take it from, seed funded this little baby to like, let's do something real. And I would say that again, like, in hindsight, I think super pumped was the right vernacular there, because it was exciting, and it's been a great kind of partnership, and it's a blast.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, give it up for Ryan Graves.